And we're back once again. Mouthbreathers Radio, episode 14, talking about everything going on with the Film Junk crew from December 19th through to December 25th, 2022. I am your humble announcer, FilmApe, and we're going to be talking about the very first Film Junk Repre. We're going to be talking about One Magic Christmas. We might get a little bit of Banshees of Inisherin talking, and of course we've got to talk about the most recent Film Junk episode number 876, with clocks in at a very nice 3+ hours. So do not touch that dial and keep it locked here to Mouthbreathers Radio. And now, here is your host, back from his Christmas trip to Jerusalem. It's Drew Nugent.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mouthbreathers Radio. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, and my trip to Jerusalem was fantastic.
How
are you today, FilmApe?
A wise man going to Jerusalem, and I'm doing good, Drew. Just kind of recovering from Christmas a little bit. What about yourself?
Yeah, same here. I mean, like we talked about before we went online, or on air, I should say. My Christmas, just kind of the same old, nothing spectacular to report back on, but nothing bad either. It was a good Christmas.
Do you have any Film Junk related Christmas traditions?
I do. Well, I don't know about a tradition, but I like to, watch some Christmas Film Junk stuff if I can. Luckily, this year, we got a little piece of content, a One Magic Christmas retro review. I watched that Christmas Eve, which led me to watch the movie itself, but we'll cover that in a bit. But I also watch, why am I blanking? A Very Jerry Christmas, or a Very Jerry Xmas. And that was my Christmas gift to you. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, I saw it, and yeah, it was a very passive-aggressive Christmas gift.
Maybe not the nicest Christmas gift, but for those people out there that don't know, there's a secret Letterboxd thread, or not Letterboxd, I can't talk. There's a secret Discord thread that I've mentioned before. I won't say the name of it, but you came in, like I think it was Christmas Eve, as the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, and demanded that people watch feature films. So I responded by logging a Very Jerry Xmas. So, yeah, that's
the feature versus short versus television versus content debate for Letterboxd rages on, and Drew certainly picked sides this Christmas, as did basically everyone else, and so it was a little bit lonely Christmas for me, and I mean, it was really just like, it was just a warning of what is going to happen if people continue on their careless ways. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate you disparaging my name for Christmas, and I look forward to that being an annual tradition.
Well, I apologize. I still see where you're coming from. I get why you like to have the purity to Letterboxd, but at the same time, I kind of want to ring in the future and just say, as we go into the future, let's get loose a little bit. Not too crazy. Like, because I think if you added together the numbers of, like, the TV and shorts I logged, it's a very small number. And the majority is feature films, the vast majority. But I just, like, I've been letterboxing for 10 years now. And as we move into this new decade, I just kind of want to keep it loose. What can I say?
That once we no longer abide by the rules, that's the death of society. So we're pretty much on a downward trend here. But I must ask, did you enjoy rewatching A Very Jerry Xmas?
I did. it's just there's a lot of body horror going on in that short. Reed blows his nose like and he shows it to the camera by accident. He's cooking the gingerbread with like 20-year-old flour. There's a lot of horrific stuff going on, but it's a great Christmas short though. It features Frankie Kinezich in a great role. Another film that I logged on Letterboxd because I was like, why not? Was Twisted, and Frank has a great role in that too, as like one of the drive-in ticket takers or something like that. During the Twister. But yeah, I love Jay Shorts. He's got a lot of shorts out there. If you go dig into his Vimeo vault.
Yeah, a very Jerry Xmas is definitely near the top tier content. I think you posted was it 2007 end of the year? Was that That's a really great video too.
Yeah, that's one thing. Not to jump too much into other stuff, but like during the Phantom Menace repre, they were talking about the Red Letter Media, like 70-minute review of Phantom Menace, and they were referring to it as like something that happened on the early internet. But it was like 2009 this thing came out, so I don't really call that the early internet. but I was just thinking like, because I went back and watched some of that, and I think in 2007, the quality that Jay was putting into that year-end 2007 video was way beyond that Red Letter Media video, and this is 2 years earlier. So I think some of the stuff they were doing back then was really cool, and I think some of the best like content I've seen put online, especially for that time period, for like a website. But it's too bad we didn't get like too much more of that stuff. We got some stuff here and there. We got the very Jerry Xmas and stuff like that. But I think it's for the better because Jay started to put his efforts into actually making films. He made a short film, Coronado Vendente, and then from there went in and did Beauty Day and stuff like that, and that's what got him to the point he's at now. And hopefully he keeps going up. But yeah.
It's really a testament to why Film Junk has had the longevity it's had and why there are people that have listened for so long, because while I've certainly had a period of time where I tuned into Red Letter Media more, just the attitude behind most stuff I find grating. And I don't know, maybe it's because Film Junk never really like hit like meteoric rise where they had a huge hit or anything like that. They just have pretty much stayed the same, and there's been a pure kind of artistic expression to what they've been doing and like a genuine nature to it. And I don't know if you feel this way, like when like Shaun of the Dead came out, I like really felt like I like related to those guys a ton in regards to where they were coming from. But then after they became like Hollywood guys for a long time, that relatability left their work and their personalities. But I feel like that has never left Film Junk, and no matter where they've like ended up in their career, which I think all of them have had pretty good creative success that anyone would be happy with, they've still remained just like the same guys. And like it or hate it, I mean, I was telling you about how much I was hating on Frank's talking about Andor this last week and how I could not even listen to the episode. I still like respect the opinion that he has, and I will eventually hopefully gird my loins and go back and be ready for the hot takes that Frankie's dishing out. And so yeah, I'll always like just love like the genuine nature of the guys.
Yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, like you said, they haven't changed much. It almost creates this weird time vortex because they feel mostly the same as to when I was listening in 2007. And then it creates this weird cognitive dissonance of like, that was so long ago. And like everything, if you look at other things out there, at the separation of time, it feels like a completely different thing. But you look back at Film Junk, and it feels a lot the same. I mean, especially when Greg comes on the show, like Greg feels like the same exact guy. It doesn't feel like any of them have changed, and their chemistry is all pretty much the same. I'd say their chemistry is probably at the best that's ever been. So yeah, but
and
the show's great.
One of the big things is just they like never miss episodes. Like the fact that for the most part we'll do like a year and they might like skip a week. That's insane. because even we're on episode 14, and I'm already been like, can we skip a week? At least in thought, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that they have these thoughts, but they like persevered through them, and the result is like just a consistency. No other podcast or even real content generators are as consistent as Film Junk is. And then even now, like, we're consistently getting, like, it was hard to keep up with all the content that got released this week. So even though they're increasing the content, it's just still like regular podcasts plus like regular bonus stuff now.
Yeah, I actually went and added up the hours of all the content released this week. And I just got it in just under the line. I just finished the Phantom Menace repre today. But yeah, I added up all the stuff that we're going to be talking about, and it's 6 hours of content. So that's a lot of content.
Yeah, that's
2 hours of that is focused solely on Avatar.
That's crazy, and that's commitment too, because it's not like there's not a lot going on during the holiday season.
And another Film Junk thing that I wanted to just touch on is you unearthed a little bit back a video of a band called the Skankin' Urinals. And this was an interesting thing to talk about, I think.
Did you remember? Did that kind of like spark something in your memory of hearing about them talk about the Skankin' Urinals?
I definitely remember them talking about it. I don't know if I'd ever heard them say the name of the band, but I did remember for sure Sean talking about like having a band where they would bring up urinals onto the stage. So I knew when I saw the name Skankin' Urinals that this was that band. But I know Sean also talked about like an embarrassing story where none of them had their guitars or instruments in tune, and they just like, you know, were totally messing up on stage, and was one of his most humiliating moments, according to him. But one thing, I hadn't seen this video before, I don't think, and so it was crazy. How did you even find it?
Well, I mean, it started somebody, I think it was Kim, maybe in the Discord. Somebody said something about Film Junk having a band or wanting to hear their band or something like that. And then that really, like, I just, out of nowhere, I was like, oh yeah, the Skankin' Urinals. So then I just searched it, and because the name is so unique, it's literally the only thing that came up. And I'm pretty sure I had searched for something a long time ago and not found anything. So I think this video was like 7 years old or 6 years old or something. And there was one comment on it, and it was someone being like, I think this is the Film Junk guys. So then we were debating whether or not it was actually them, because it's a poor quality video, and it was hard to tell. But what it is it's Chin on lead guitar, it's Jay on guitar and lead vocals, and then Sean on bass and vocals, I think, as well. And the best thing is like Sean's giving it in the video, and so people were like, no way that's Sean. And he was jumping all over the place and dancing around. And then I don't know who the drummer. Is he wearing a
mask in the video?
I'm not sure. He's like off to the corner. There were people like dancing in front of the stage, I think, and they were wearing.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to tell at certain points who was who, because there was so many people in front of the stage at different points. But I know I saw like a larger person who I don't know who that is, but he was doing some metal singing. And then I saw Jay, who I didn't recognize. Couldn't even tell it was him until I zoomed, or I just freeze framed onto his face. And once I looked at a certain angle, zoomed in, I could tell that it was Jay. But he was looking super young, and it was crazy to even think that that was him.
Yeah, I got like the quick intro clip here. We'll play it. But the guy that is on the mic, you mentioned the bigger guy. I'm pretty sure he was in one of the Albino Man videos that we had talked about, because I recognized him.
I actually just saw that. Yeah.
So let's listen to what he has to say, and as soon as you hear what he says, you're like, of course, this is Film Junk related.
All the way from St. Catharines, the amazing Skankin' Urinals! We came here to do two things: chew bubblegum and kick, and we're all out of bubblegum.
that's a little taste right there of Skank and Urinals. I encourage everyone to go and just search it out if you haven't seen the video. And Skankin spelled Skankin and Urinal spelled the way it's always been. And you'll find it. I think the audio just alone is a little hard to listen to because it's poor quality. But coupled with the video, I think it works. And the video is just a little under 10 minutes, and it's a chop up of a full set of theirs. And so it's super fun to see that blast from the past.
Yeah, for sure. It was really cool to see. And there's a nice little guitar riff at the end. I'm guessing it was Chin, but the song they were playing at the end. But I was really getting into that. It was a really interesting thing to see. The only band name, because I was never even aware of the name Skanking Urinals. I understood the urinal thing. I knew that was a thing, but I didn't know it was a part of their band name. But the only band name I was aware of is they had like a band called Transmissions from Beyond, I think. But they actually have a music video for out there. I don't know if it's still up. It might be. But yeah, so this was really cool to see. It was a rare piece of film drunk history that I hadn't seen yet. So yeah, it was really cool.
This is a little bit, this might be a little too personal. So Drew, you can stop me. But one thought that I had while watching this was like a serious jealousy for, number one, having a group of people that they like create with pretty much since they were young. And then two, the longevity of which they've been creating and actually making cool and interesting stuff. Like, I feel like I'm nowhere near that, particularly when I was in high school. I played in high school bands, and I don't think any of them were as good as the Skank and Urinals. And then certainly the longevity wasn't there to like actually get good and improve creatively and improve like working on creative stuff with other people. So the fact that they've had a band, they've made movies, they've made video games, they have a huge podcast network, they've made like solo music and all that. There's like, again, it's like admittedly just some like jealousy for their creative output.
Yeah, I get what you're feeling or saying there. Like I've heard Sean talk about, or Jay talk about, part of the key to the show and how long it's gone is that they've always had things going. They've always had projects ever since he's known Sean. And whether it be the band or they had e-zines. I was actually just looking today. If you go to archive.org and type in spacejunk.org, you can see the earliest versions of Film Junk. And the furthest back it went was 2001, and it existed as an e-zine. You can actually look at some of that stuff, so that's pretty cool to see. But yeah, they just always had stuff on the go. So I think that because they were so creative and because they were so committed, that's why they were able to do what they've done. But I get the sense, or I know what you're talking about, and like I've definitely had friends who have helped me do creative things, so I don't want to say that I've never had that, because I have. But I do feel like what they have is really nice, because for the most part, and I can't say for sure because I don't really know them like truly, but it seems like most of their friends are pretty agreeable and like and are just happy to be a part of this, and there doesn't seem to be that much conflict outside of maybe Reed Farrington sometimes. But then again, that's just what we hear on the podcast, so who knows what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that they've they haven't missed an episode more than just, a week at a time. They might have a week here or there they miss, but they've never, ever like gone on some big giant sabbatical. So that's really impressive. And yeah, I don't want to say I wish, because I have friends who've helped me do creative things. I've never been in a band, but the closest thing I've done is like trying to make short films. I've had people help me do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do kind of envy that sort of creative energy that they have. That seems to just be undying. It's really cool.
And one of the big things is, yeah, you're right. We don't have much of a behind the scenes insight into the show and the workings on of their friend group, but we have had a couple instances where we were aware of conflict, most notably having to ask Greg to step away from the show, and they handled it in such a way that Greg was still around. He's still like a huge part of Film Junk, in my opinion, and he runs two adjacent shows. So the fact that they were able to maintain that, figure it out, get through it, it was for the betterment of Film Junk. And to me, is also for, I think, Greg is in a better place in regards to what he's doing, which is focusing on his interests a little bit more and producing content through that. And so, like, that is a huge testament to why they're able to maintain and continue to make stuff, because you're right. Like, how many times have you tried to do something and then with other people and then conflict arises and then it's just the end of it? Like, you're never going to get anywhere if that's always happening, and it's bound to happen, particularly if you're working with people who are maybe not used to doing whatever you're working on. So again, the fact that they got through that to me is very telling of what's going on behind the scenes that we might not know about.
Yeah, there's that, and there's only a few little conflict points throughout that we can really point to, and I think that's pretty impressive. That's one of them. I think a lot of it happened more in the early days, like, you know, when they had Chin on the show and then he kind of fell off, but they always seemed to end up where they needed to be, and I think that's pretty cool. And like you said, it's great. They're still friends with Chin now. I think Chin was in a picture for something. I don't remember what it was, but I think I saw him somewhat recently in some sort of Instagram picture or something. I forget.
Yeah, I think at Jerry's birthday party photo.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. And then obviously, like you said, Greg still has 2 shows, and yeah, it's great and it's endearing and it's really nice that they clearly all stay friends and they have this awesome friend group. But yeah, it's really cool.
But yeah, let's jump into the top 5 here, and we got loads and loads of film junk to celebrate this holiday season. So let's get into it.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff.
Okay, Houston, roll complete. Roger, roll complete.
So at number 5, we have The Whale review. This was finally dropped in both video form and in audio form. But yeah, The Whale is a movie I've been looking forward to for a long time. Finally got to see it. The opinions of the guys were put out there. And yeah, Jay wasn't a fan of it at all. Sean wasn't a fan of it at all. Frank seemed to be the most positive. Well, first of all, let me just say, I love The Whale. A lot of people have been negative about it. I can kind of see in certain areas why that is. But it just hit emotionally for me. I thought what Darren Aronofsky was doing was interesting. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so I was a little bit, you were talking about how you struggled listening to the Andor episode and you quit listening. I was kind of at that point with this, but I just pushed through. But yeah, so it was a little bit disappointing to hear that they didn't like it, but you know, a lot of people, it's a divisive movie, so what can we say? But yeah, in terms of myself, I really enjoyed the movie.
So what were their, having not listened, what were their star ratings? Do you remember?
I think Jay gave it a 2.5, Frank a 4, and I'm blanking on Sean. I think it was probably a 3.
Nobody like straight up hated it, but it wasn't like resounding like love for it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it came down to like Sean and Jay responding to not so much any of the controversial stuff, but more so to the cheesiness of the source material, and that very much feels like a play in a lot of regards. But I don't know, I kind of just jived with that. I got into the performances. I mean, I don't know if this is fair, but like my expectations, like in terms of the writing, were lower because it was based on a play. Like it was more like I looked at it as sort of a stylistic thing, when maybe that's not fair, but that's just how I went into it. But yeah, I think a lot of it was them responding to how sort of hammy a lot of it is.
Yeah, it was a little interesting with the release this week because I mean I was gonna try to get out to it, but only playing in a couple theaters, playing mostly at the big mall in the area, so I didn't want to go there because I heard it was just chaos. But I had 2 friends that went out and saw it, and like you, they like loved it. One of them said it was the best movie of the year. So I'm very curious now to. I think divisive films are what I'm hoping to have. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily hoping for just like resounding praise for everything. I think it's good to have some discourse. And I think it's good to have some disagreement, and it's good to see people either love something or hate something. So, yeah, I mean, were you surprised though with the reactions from the Film Junk guys?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely hoping Jay would like it more. He kind of said that Aronofsky was hit and miss. I don't agree with that. I'm not going to say that because the reason I question that is because I think if you go back and you look at Jay's reviews of Aronofsky movies, I think he's pretty much liked all of them up to this point. So that's why I question that statement. But I'm not going to say that all of Aronofsky's movies hit the highs of The Wrestler or Requiem for a Dream, but I think I think he mostly makes great movies, and I guess that can be questioned because they are getting more divisive. Frank said something like he makes movies to like not be boring or to do something shocking or provocative. I think there's something to that, but I think someone you could easily compare Darren Aronofsky to, who I haven't heard many people say this. Maybe people have, and I'm just haven't heard it. But I think he's a lot like Lars von Trier, because I think there's a comparison there to be had with his films and Lars von Trier's films. But yeah.
So we're gonna get into it because we had a repre this week, we had a retro review, then we had a regular episode, and then this whale review, which they don't really classify the whale as being anything. But do you like this when it's like, I know we talked about you're not going to be able to log it on your letterbox list of featured reviews, but do you like when they would just do this one-off, and do you think that it's something that they should do more in order to hit more films, where they should just get out and see a film, do a single review on it? And then to expound on that, was there anything that they didn't review this year that you think maybe they could have fitted in as just a single review?
Well, first of all, I think I would rather them just edit the review into the show. Like, say you have an Avatar 2 show, just drop that whale review in there. I think you could do that. But that's coming from I'd rather, this is just completely ridiculous, it doesn't really matter, but I would rather have or be able to put that on my list as a featured review. But then at the same point, I know they're starting to focus more on Patreon, and it's starting to become more comfortable just to kind of get loose and throw things up in video form, just in little bits and pieces. And so I don't think it's bad, and it actually results in us getting a lot more content because they're just doing all kinds of things. But when, in terms of something they could have reviewed in singular form, it seemed to be up in the air on this episode whether they're going to review Babylon or not, because they're going to take a break for this week. I don't think they're going to do a show this week. And then when they get back, it seemed like they're going to do Glass Onion. So that I doubt they're going to see Babylon. And I know Jay was kind of not excited about it anyway, and there's been some pretty bad reviews. And while I saw it and I was kind of disappointed, I would still love to hear what they think about it. So I do kind of hope they see that. And they could do it in a review like this, and I would be completely fine with that. But yeah, I think ultimately I prefer that they put it into the show, but at the same time, I think it would be cool if they started to see more stuff and they did reviews like this.
And then do you like having the video form there? Is that your preference? Will you watch the video over listening to the audio?
Well, I like it only because I have YouTube Premium. So I'll go into the YouTube link, and I'll just save it on my YouTube, in a playlist, and then I'll listen to it on YouTube because I don't know, I actually use YouTube a lot, so I like to have it on there. But so I like it for that purpose. I don't usually just sit and watch the videos, but for the one Magic Christmas one, I actually did, because I didn't get a projector, but I dug out an old projector and I projected that on the wall, and I sat and watched the whole thing on Christmas Eve, so that was pretty fun.
Final question for you about The Whale. Will Brendan Fraser take home the gold at next year's Oscars?
I'm going to say no. I think there's too much controversy. I'm starting to worry that he wouldn't be nominated, which would hurt because I think he gives an amazing performance. And it just, Jay touched on something of like, it just seems like so like cliched Hollywood, like this guy up in a fat suit, and it's like, this is my Oscar winning role, and it's a comeback, and you can just see him like in the audience, and they're like, Brendan Fraser for The Whale, and he does this little clap and like points at them, and he walks up to the stage, and it's just like, so cliched. But I get that. I get how it's kind of an Oscar, or it seems like an Oscar baity movie, but there's so many things in the movie that take it beyond that. And also, in my opinion, Brendan Fraser, like, beyond all the PR and the fucking like comeback stuff, like whatever, he puts his heart and his soul into this performance. Like, you can see it, or I can see it just looking at it. I can see that he 100% puts himself there. And I think it's the best performance of the year. I think he deserves the Oscar, but I think because the Oscars are mostly political, and I don't mean just like, I think political in that it's always a popularity contest, or like whether this ticks these certain boxes. I don't think he's going to win because of those reasons, but I think he deserves it.
Who else is even up in the running for Best Actor this year?
Well, I heard that like a big one that's starting to move forward is Austin Butler for Elvis, but I find that even more ridiculously Oscar-y. Like Brendan Fraser is too much, but yeah, let's give it to a guy who played Elvis. Like, what's more cliche than that? But yeah, anyway.
So yeah, like I cannot think of any other performances, male lead actor performances, that can get any buzz. For like female leads, I'm thinking like it's Michelle Yeoh and Cate Blanchett that are probably the two favored performances. Both are like killer performances. I think I would go to Michelle Yeoh just because I think it was a more difficult role and she killed it in that film. But again, it's interesting that we're really getting away from like award season buzz. Like usually at a TIFF, we would have a few, oh, that was a really good performance, or this was a really good performance, but it's not even, there was no buzz out of TIFF. There was nothing that I hadn't already heard about that was revealed as like, oh, you got to check that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from, but I think Cate Blanchett, in terms of Best Actress, I would guess that she wins. I can see how Michelle Yeoh is a little bit better, maybe. But yeah, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once is a shot for sure at Best Picture. I think it'd be a cool one to see win. I didn't even love it, but I still think it'd be cool to see win. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Oscar time. I mean, not to get off on a huge tangent, I just finished rewatching it. I 5-starred it again. I really enjoyed it. It's not my number one of the year. I'm not even sure if it's top 5. It might have got into the top 5 now. But in regards to a film, if it won, I think it would just be like so deserved. And that cast and the filmmakers, everything there, I think no matter, even if you're not like 100% on the film, it would at least be a cool one to like get some momentum behind it and win some awards. And I mean, we're talking about the most stupid, annoying, dusty old thing, which is award shows. So if there could be even a little glint of like, oh, that's interesting, that would be nice, because there's certainly not a lot to talk about these award shows.
Yeah, and I mean, I think The Whale, even though maybe it seems Oscar baity, is interesting. I think it's a more provocative movie than a lot of the movies that are being considered. But even though Jay didn't like it, even he said that a lot of the emotion in the end, or towards the end, seemed very real. So even he had to hand it to Fraser. But yeah, I'm pushing for Fraser. I hope he wins. And it's not because like I'm like some big, huge Brendan Fraser fan and I want to see him come back. It's because I loved him in this movie, and I loved him in No Sudden Move. And I haven't even seen any of the Mummy movies. Like, I saw George of the Jungle when I was a kid. It's not like I'm some huge Fraser head, but yeah, but I've really been enjoying what he's been doing lately, so yeah.
And speaking of real emotion, let's jump into our number 2 here, a film that I know got some real emotion out of you, Drew, and we got a clip. Let's take a listen.
All that's the crazy resetting of time, how they get the dad back. that I really like. It's the stuff when the dad actually dies that feels very off. Like it's not even a thing. You don't see the dad like dealing.
I feel like that's a Disney thing. Like you can't actually show the dad literally being shot, but
I think Jay said the rest.
You do see him shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see Mary Steenburgen or Bergen run into the bank, and she's down like, oh, he's dead. My husband said, get the defibrillator. Maybe he still has a pulse and we can get the rhythm back. But if the pulse is gone, then leave it away.
In my version,
it do CPR.
I could have swore on Disney Plus it didn't do that. Did that get cut for the Disney Plus version?
No, I watched the Disney Plus version.
As soon as he gets shot, that's it. The scene ends. You don't even know if he died or not.
She comes back into the bank.
No, well, there is. I just thought you were meaning like they cut away and you don't really see him, but she's definitely in the bank for a bit because he runs out. Whatever that guy's name is, runs out and takes the car, right? And they're like,
yeah,
they're taking your car.
My kids are in that car.
Yeah, but I never saw them getting a defibrillator and.
No, I'm joking about that.
Well, that's what I mean. As soon as it shoots it, you don't really know what happens.
No,
I didn't even know he was dead until 10 minutes later.
I'm pretty sure they say he's dead.
So we're talking about the retro review for the Philip Borsos directed film from 1985. This is One Magic Christmas. Drew, what did you think of the film, and what did you think of the retro review?
Well, I really liked the film, and I enjoyed the retro review, but I have to say I was a little shocked. He dropped some pretty heavy-duty spoilers right there in the clip. I kind of wish I wouldn't have. I just listened to the whole retro review before I saw the movie, but I wish I would have held off. I wish I would have just went and watched it without hearing anything, because I was fully privy to everything that was going to happen in this movie. But yeah, I think it's very emotionally intense, and I know it's playing a lot on It's a Wonderful Life. That's very clear. But yeah, there's just some stuff that you wouldn't expect to see in a Disney movie, or even just any family Christmas movie. Obviously, like they said, the dad gets shot in the middle of it, and then, well, first of all, it's about an angel named Gideon, played by Harry Dean Stanton. And he comes in and he's set to help this family that the mom, played by Mary Steenburgen, doesn't say Merry Christmas. And he's like, I have to help these people get into the Christmas spirit. So what he does is he goes to war and he sends someone to shoot her husband. And I don't know if that's exactly what happens. Jay was saying that on the...
That's not what happens.
Jay was saying on the repre. See, I'm getting mixed up. On the retro review, that Gideon goes to war and he takes their family and holds them hostage, and he's like, you better fucking say Merry Christmas. And I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, having gotten the film spoiled for me, I was very into everything that was going on still. And there's even a point where the guy who holds up the bank, he takes the kids and he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. And but he's driving off, and they end up just plummeting off into a river. And at that point, I was like, the kids are dead too. I just thought that, because it's so much crazy stuff has already happened. And I got pretty emotional when Mary Steenburgen was walking through the house, and she just thought her whole family was gone. And but then they end up showing Harry Dean Stanton with the kids. He pulls them out of the lake or whatever. And the kids are reunited with Mary Steenburgen. And I dropped some pretty heavy tear when she was sitting the kids down and telling them that their father would not be back for Christmas. And yeah, that was heavy.
Yeah, I think it helps to have some information about the film, because the stuff that happens in it, I think it could be very easy to kind of mock the film because of how, need I say, drama for drama's sake it gets. And it was interesting listening to the retro review, because they, at first, and I mean, it starts off with a farting Christmas song, the retro review, and there's, as you alluded to, you were kind of copying what Jay jokingly says about the film in regards to this angel going to war with the Mary Steenburgens. character Ginny, and there's all this stuff. But I think if you're aware that it's basically It's a Wonderful Life, but maybe a little bit more dramatic than it needs to be, you can appreciate what I think is the best thing in the film, which is Harry Dean Stanton as Gideon. And I was shocked that Frankie said he was the worst part. He is the only thing that keeps the film together for me, because if you are a grown man and you're just appearing in a little girl's bedroom or walking up to a little girl on the street in the middle of the night and talking to her, I think it's very difficult to make it seem like it's not a weird or creepy thing. But because Harry Dean Stanton has that real, genuine, like, he's not like acting here. He's just being Harry Dean Stanton, and he has kind of like a standoffish, like not caring about anything, but still being like really sincere. And I think it works for the film, and that is a real foundation for this film, because it does get crazy, and you are like, why? There's a lot there, but if you can just appreciate, okay, this happens, but there's this foundation, which is Gideon, I think it makes the film more palatable.
Yeah, for sure. And they mentioned how you could interpret the Gideon character as a perv, or like, even they mentioned the Roger Ebert review where Roger Ebert says, like, he kind of comes off like the man that our parents warned us not to go near. But I didn't sense that at all. I'm on the end of what you're saying. I thought he was completely charming. I never found anything creepy about him, really. Yeah, I thought he was great. I question Frankie's stance on saying he was not that great. I think it's just him responding to some sort of Harry Dean Stanton love that's out there that he wants to push back against. But yeah, Harry Dean Stanton rocks. That's just a fact.
Yeah, and Gideon, even the look of his character, this idea of an angel is just someone who lived a good life and then comes back after their death. And so Gideon has passed away. He was like an old cowboy. So he's wearing this awesome long coat, and he has this awesome hat. And a lot of times he's just like sitting in a tree, and he's just hanging out, and you're like, okay, why is he like sitting in a tree? But again, because of the genuine, like, grounded performance Harry Dean Stanton offers, you're like, okay, I can get behind this film. As an adult, looking at the drama for drama's sake crap that happens in this movie, I don't think any of it is necessary. Literally, I was empathetic towards the Ginny character from square one. Like, from literally the introduction of the character, the stress that she's under, having to put up with her husband losing his job, having to work a job she doesn't like, having to make sure that Christmas is going to be okay for her kids. I was like on board. We never had to get into the like insanity, which is like a bank robbery and a murder and all this stuff. I think that if they had been a little bit more creative in the writing, we would actually have a genuine Christmas classic. For myself, this is like a heavy nostalgic classic because I watched it as a young child, and Gideon's look as a character has stuck with me, and I think that was the same with Jay. It's curious to me to hear you watch it and then be able to be like, okay, I can still get into it despite not having that nostalgia bump.
Well, I think I just liked it. There's a lot of good performances, and like I did like it, but I still gave it a 3.5. I don't think it's like a perfect film or anything. I think a lot of what you're saying is true. I was empathetic towards Mary Steenburgen's character, and while Jay made the comparison of like Gideon going to war, while that's not literally what's happening, I just think it kind of comes off weird and can come off like that because, he comes in to help them, and then right when he comes in, all this shit starts hitting the fan, and the lesson is like you need to get in the Christmas spirit and like, really embrace this stuff, and then you can have your husband back and everything's fine. When really, she was just reacting to Christmas like a lot of people out there do. And I think Jay touched on like a lot of like Christmas movies in general have like kind of questionable, moral ideas like that. And I think this one, like you said, it pushes it a little bit too far. But I still got into like just while it is kind of drama for drama's sake, I thought the kid actors were really good, and I just got into the like kind of raw emotional feelings of it. But yeah, I was just pleasantly surprised. Like I'd never even heard this movie before, and it's got a couple people I like. Obviously, Harry Dean Stanton, Mary Steenburgen. So I enjoyed it. I also like the Santa Claus. Like I like that Jay compared him to Daniel Plainview in the episode. I didn't really get that, but he definitely did feel like this sort of like Swedish like Santa Claus like classic version. So I like that. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie, but it's definitely not like a 4 or a 4.5 or anything like that to me. But it's just a solid 3.5.
You mentioned this kind of the rawness, and I think that is the best stuff in the film, even down to like the filmmaking. And for Canadian films around this time, there was a lot that were like this, even if they weren't like this is just set in the 80s, so they're just shooting in 80s like suburbia, Canada. And so these are houses that if you were in the area, you'd likely still see them looking fairly similar to how they do in the film, and the neighborhoods would look the same. And so it's like so raw there. And then they give interesting problems to the family that are not like, because there's the tub thing, and there's this whole build up to the tub overfilling and all this stuff. And it's like dealing with a single bathroom and being a mom who's just trying to take a shower. And that is like such a cool, realistic thing. And then when the tub does overfill, it's not like it's the end of the world. The kids like clean it up and then they break a window by accident. But again, it's not the end of the world. It's just this real raw stuff that you're like, they would never do this in a film today. And if they did, it would be like, oh no, the tub overfilled and then spilled into the neighbor's downstairs, and it cost $10,000.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
So like, I love that they're able to present like a rawness and a realness that you don't see for the most part in films today. And there is just a section of Canadian films that feel this way. So it is just fun, and a ton of my love for the film, or my like for the film, just comes from like being able to travel back in time and enjoy that period.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I was pleasantly surprised about the movie, because I was kind of going into it. I was worried. I think I had because I was just building ideas of it in my head because I had no idea what it was really. So I thought maybe it was like set like the 1800s or something. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe because I just saw Gideon's costume and I just thought it was like some old timey story. But I was glad to see it was kind of a contemporary setting, just in a, average part of Canada. And one movie that it reminded me of, which also has Mary Steenburgen, is Melvin and Howard. That's a great movie, and I would highly recommend that to you. It's directed by Jonathan Demme. It has Jason Robards. Jason Robards could probably be the Gideon character in this. Well, Jason Robards plays Howard Hughes in that movie. He's kind of a smaller aspect of the film, but it's about a guy who, I'll just set up the beginning of it. He picks up a guy hitchhiking, but that guy is Howard Hughes. And then Howard Hughes dies at the beginning of the movie, but it's revealed that he just put this random guy who like lives in just an average house somewhere with Mary Steenburgen and his wife. He puts them in his will and he gives them like millions of dollars. So it just shows how they deal with that. But
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of that movie. Yeah, it's really good. I love it. And it was an inspiration on Paul Thomas Anderson. Literally the first shot where Jason Robards is riding a motorcycle, you can directly compare that to The Master. It looks exactly the same when Philip Seymour Hoffman's riding his motorcycle. But yeah, it's an awesome movie. I'd recommend it to anybody.
So were you surprised that this was a film worthy of a retro review? Are you happy to have some kind of like out of nowhere recommendations so you can just see something new and then experience an FJ review of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would like more stuff like that. Definitely gives me something to discover. But I think mostly they do it when they have a connection to it, and clearly there was a nostalgia, at least for Jay. I think Sean and Frank it was their first time watch. But I don't know. One thing I was gonna ask, is this like a Canadian classic? Because I know it's a Canadian film, but like I know you had nostalgia for it, and I know Kim from the Discord is also from Canada, and it seemed like she was aware of it, just in talking about stuff on Discord. But yeah, is it like somewhat of a classic?
Yes and no for I think a certain age range, particularly if you like were watching television in like say the early to mid 90s, you would definitely have probably come across One Magic Christmas on TV. I'm trying to think of the things that would be played the most. The Mr. Bean Christmas episode, that to me is like totally associated with Christmas. There'd always be hockey something on, so there would be stuff like that. But yeah, One Magic Christmas for me is like turn on the TV, One Magic Christmas was on as a kid and you just watch it kind of thing. I think a lot of people maybe wouldn't know it by name, but would recognize Gideon, and then once you started explaining to them, would know exactly what the movie was. Do you guys have any like say Texas based Christmas shows or movies where you're like, okay, that's Christmas?
I'm trying to think. Not really. I mean, outside of like Walker Texas Ranger, the Christmas episode. I'm just kidding. I don't know anybody or if that even exists. But yeah, I can't think of anything that's like, specific to my area. But I guess it's cool because Canada has more. I know Canada doesn't have like a bustling film industry or anything, but there is certain Canadian productions, and I think the stuff made in Texas is kind of limited because ultimately, it's just the American film industry, and things are centered or more made in Hollywood or whatever. Just through Hollywood, there's not like a lot of stuff set here. There is some stuff, but certainly not a lot of Christmas stuff. I can't think of any sort of Christmas movies that have like a Texas flavor.
It's not Christmas related, but he's the filmmaker that I would immediately associate with doing like modern versions of what like the setting and the approach to One Magic Christmas is, at least on like the grounded, like forgetting the magical realism element, would be Sean Baker, and like the way that he presents the reality of area, and he's able to like capture it on the film in a way where I feel like, oh, I could go there and I could experience that. So for whatever reason, I was like, Red Rocket is kind of the modern equivalent, at least in like tone and cinematic approach to these films from Canada of that time period, where it's like, go to a neighborhood and shoot there and don't try to hide that it's somewhere else. Just present it for all of its like rawness and realness and make sure you capture that on film, and the result is like a pretty unique and specific vibe.
For sure. And it's interesting you bring up Sean Baker because Tangerine is a bit of a Christmas film. More on the way that, Shane Black, a lot of his movies are Christmas films. Christmas is sort of happening in the background. But yeah, Sean Baker definitely has that similar approach of, just wanting to explore real people and real settings and wanting to make everything feel very authentic by just shooting in real places. Harmony Korine also does it. Harmony Korine's movies are a lot more surreal and sort of abrasive to some, but he does a similar thing. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's ever been a Harmony Korine Christmas film, but there should be.
Do you think there should be more Christmas movies? I'm like shocked that we don't. I guess the market is just cornered by like Hallmark movies and these like $2 million rom-coms that they just churn out 30 a year and then make boatloads of advertising dough off them. But I'm just surprised that, because I was thinking like, what if they set the next Beignet Blanc film at Christmas? Like that would be an easy win to me. And I don't know why more
really.
filmmakers don't do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. because a lot of these movies like Glass Onion drops at December 30th or whatever, not December 30th, December 23rd, because of like where the Oscars fall. A lot of these things are coming out around Christmas, so why not take the next like Knives Out movie and make it Christmas themed? I think it's a great idea. I was actually thinking, like, I can't think of any auteur movies that are like true Christmas films. There's certain ones that have Christmas in the background. Eyes Wide Shut, a lot of people watch because it has a Christmas vibe. But I can't think of anything where Christmas is central to the story. I think I'd love to see a Wes Anderson Christmas film. He could definitely capture the kitsch of it. I'd like to see anybody take a stab at it, honestly. Yes, I definitely think we need more. It's an easy win in terms of box office. People love to go see something seasonal. So, yeah, people should do it.
Yeah, honestly, all holidays, like Hanukkah movie, Halloween movie, Thanksgiving movie, I just feel like you're totally right. Having like an auteur director be like, I'm going to dive in and make like the ultimate like holiday related movie. That would be such an easy win, in my opinion. Like we would already be lined up for a new PTA movie, but if it was like, again, like Licorice Pizza set at Christmas, like that is just like speaking my language. So we certainly need a better approach, to an elevated approach to Christmas movies, where we're not just regulating them to like cheap movies, but actually setting out to make some annual Christmas classics.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I think Jay touched on a while ago that horror, like in terms of Halloween movies, like Halloween movies are more cinematic because it's more central to just a genre. Like anything that's horror can be a Halloween movie. But with a Christmas movie, it's not so much a genre. I guess it is a subgenre. You can say the genre of Christmas films, but it's more centered around like, these morals and ideas and, decorations, whatever, just trying to get things to fit into Christmas time. So it's not as simple as just having a horror movie and that being a Halloween movie. But I think it's something more people should experiment with, because I think you can make a really cool Christmas movie that is also like a true like art film, or for lack of a better word. But yeah, people should definitely try it.
Speaking of art film, let's jump into Banshees of Inisherin here. They talked about this on the most recent episode 876. This was in the other stuff we watched category, and we got a clip. Let's take a listen.
Is the rainbow, there's a rainbow at the beginning of the movie. That's a digital rainbow, right? What do you think?
I don't think so. It's weird.
I don't think so.
Like, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that I was thinking seemed digital, but I think just because it looks so nice, like I don't know, just something about how beautiful it is. You're almost like, this can't be real. But I'm pretty sure like it was all shot on location and is real. So, but there is one thing that did bug me in the movie that is not real. I wasn't crazy about the effects on the hand. I won't get into details of what happens with the hand, but I don't know. It's just the look of that bugged me.
So I'm looking here. Frank gave it a 4.5. Sean gave it a 4.5. Jay didn't review it. Didn't give it a star rating. I didn't really get a good sense of, because did he talk about this a few weeks ago?
I don't think so. I think he did watch it a while back, but I don't remember him talking about it. This is another one that kind of slipped through the cracks in terms of getting a main review. I guess this is as close as we're going to get. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie I really liked. I think it's one of the better movies of the year for sure. What were your thoughts on it?
I mean, we gave it the same star rating. I don't know if I really liked it. I still gave it a 4, and that was almost by necessity because I like it more than 3 Billboards. But I gave 3 Billboards a 4. I couldn't give it anything higher than a 4, so that's kind of where I was at. Great performances. I just don't think the writing is on the level of In Bruges or Seven Psychopaths. I think for whatever reason, Martin McDonagh is just pushing things a little too hard. I think he didn't need to, I don't know, bring in some of the allegorical stuff between their relationship and like the Irish, I believe it was like a civil war that was going on. So I was not as crazy about that. That being said, I mean, an interesting setting, great performances. It's the year of Colin Farrell. This dude is blowing up. Talk about varied performances, because I was thinking we have After Yang, we have the Batman, and then we have this. And I mean, interesting performances in all three, and they couldn't be more different. So in regards to someone who might deserve getting a nomination for something, any of those three, I think, would be an okay pick to nominate for this year.
Well, actually, now that you bring that up, we were talking about Oscar hopefuls and who has a chance for Best Actor. But I do remember, I think, talk of like Colin Farrell rising up and there being a chance that he might win for this movie, for Banshees of Inisherin. But yeah, his performance in the Batman is kind of slept on because, I mean, it was back in March now, so people have short-term memory. But yeah, that was a great performance too. Yeah, he's killing it this year for sure. I definitely like the movie. I liked it more than you, I think. I still haven't seen In Bruges. That's a blind spot. I haven't seen Seven Psychopaths in a long time. I think I saw it in like 2012, so it's been 10 years now. Three Billboards, I wasn't crazy about. I thought it was okay, but I thought it was kind of overrated. But I was happy to say I really like this. I can definitely see where you're coming from, and they touched on this in the Phone Drunk review as well. Oh, some of the allegorical stuff gets a little heavy-handed, and that's where it shifted away from being what I thought it was going to be, which is more of like kind of a Mikey and Nikki, just friendship breakup movie, which is something that I love. Like, I love movies like that. And it starts to get more surreal, and it starts to kind of lean in towards the allegorical stuff. And while that wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, I didn't adamantly dislike it. I thought it was interesting, but it might be a little bit heavy-handed. But yeah, and there's also weird stuff, and I think they touched on this a little bit too, with like the Barry Keoghan character and whatever was going on with his dad. I didn't fully understand that stuff. That was strange, but I did love the setting. The performances were great. The person who played the sister was really good. I don't know her name, but yeah, I like the film a lot.
Yeah, I think that was Carrie Condon, I think, is who played the sister. Right. And she was in Three Billboards, apparently. I don't remember her at all. And she's in a bunch of apparently, I'm looking at it, she's in like Avengers, like all the Avengers films. I don't remember her. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the right person.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't she in Gone Girl, or am I thinking of somebody different?
Yeah, I don't see it listed here.
I'm just looking at her real quick because I was gonna say I thought she was in the Avengers. If it's who I'm thinking of, she like plays like a CG character. She's like motion captured, but it's like one of Thanos' army or somebody in there. But or no, hold on. The person I'm thinking of who's like one of Thanos' minions, that is the person from Gone Girl. I think Carrie Condon, she plays like the voice of like Tony Stark's AI or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a different person.
But yeah, I don't know. The Film Junk talk on this, I just kind of like breezed over it. I didn't really take a ton from it, and I started re-listening to it before the show, but I didn't dive too far into it, so I need to get back into it. But you're right about the Barry Keoghan thing, or Keoghan, or however you say his last name. There are some dark implications there that the film does not treat, in my opinion, with enough not necessarily reverence, but they don't dive into that enough for me to be okay with what it's implying, because it's implying that his dad molested him, and that's why he's like this pervy character. And so there's some dark stuff that's implied there, and the film, in my opinion, just kind of breezes over that stuff. So I would have, if we're gonna go there, I think we need to dive a little bit more deep and give that, at least portray it with the weight, rather than just using it as like a way to like have this like narrative thing going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm gonna give full spoilers, so just spoiler alert for this movie. We've already spoiled a bit, but I'm just gonna go full blown. So there you go.
That this
But
is before we go into that. That's an interesting idea of okay. So if if like Film Junk spoil something, are we allowed to spoil something? And then if like I have to imagine if you've listened to Film Junk talk about it, you've already seen the film, and you're certainly not coming here. So that is something we have not really discussed. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't really know where I stand on that, but we could discuss it further. But just to give people a warning, just in case, I will be talking spoilers. But what I was gonna ask is Barry Keoghan's character, like he's killed by his dad, right? Like that's what happens there. I haven't seen it since the theater, but am I wrong on that?
That's an interesting thought. I didn't think of that, but no, that's a very good. Yeah, it makes sense. Like again, I was kind of souring on the film by the end of it, so I wasn't thinking that hard on it. But yeah, it would make sense. It's implied that there's an inevitable death that's coming in the film, and it turns out to be his. But I wasn't sure if he just committed suicide, or I think I like how you're interpreting it better. I think that would, but then I would want to see some justice at least for the father character.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think it would make more sense in terms of like it felt like stuff was sort of coming out in terms of whatever was going on with them, and it seems like he just wanted to put an end to that. But yeah, some of that stuff is very strange, and I'd definitely like to see it explored further. But I like the whole idea of like some of the surreal stuff that happens at the end, like when he like burns down Brendan Gleeson's house and he's sort of just sitting there like ready to die. I like the idea that like you can never really be right in a fight. Like no matter like, you know, because Colin Farrell feels justified because, you know, his donkey gets killed by Brendan Gleeson cutting his fingers off. And all of that stuff is very disturbing, has a strange vibe to it. And I like that. But so he feels justified once his donkey chokes on one of these fingers. But then he goes and he burns his house down. You still sort of feel for Brendan Gleeson. And yeah, so I think it has, in terms of the allegory on war, like nobody's ever right. Like just getting into these conflicts, like it's just going to hurt both people or both parties. And I like that idea. But yeah, it's certainly not a perfect film, but I liked it a lot though.
Do you recall what the FJ crew thought of Martin McDonagh's previous films? Do you have any recollection there?
I know I'm pretty sure they pretty thoroughly reviewed or had a full review for 3 Billboards. I think Jay liked it a lot. I forget about the other guys. I'm pretty sure they were still positive. Maybe I have somewhat of a recollection of Frank being less positive, but I still think he liked it overall. I don't think Jay's ever seen In Bruges. I could be wrong, but just from my memory. I think Sean has, and he really liked it. 7 Psychopaths, I don't have any memory of them talking about it. Yeah, that's about it, as far as I know.
For myself, like, In Bruges was a film that I was, like, excited for. I remember going out to the theater, seeing it first day. I remember a lot of my friends, for whatever reason, were also excited for it, and every one of us just kind of like loved the film. So that was my first introduction to Martin McDonagh. And then 7 Psychopaths came out, and I mean, certainly he's not there's no subtlety in his writing. Like he is a very like written, but I felt with In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths, as much as they're very written films, they like unfold in like a really natural way. So my biggest problems with Banshees and then 3 Billboards was just it felt like he was really forcing some of the narrative conflict and doing stuff that didn't necessarily feel natural for us to get where we ended up going. Again, they're all of his films great performances. I couldn't have been more happy to see Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson back working together. Like they have great chemistry, even when this film is like they're supposed to be like at war. Even the times where there was like a scene where they're not even talking, and Brendan Gleeson is driving the wagon, and you like felt something like some warmth there, despite not there being conflict between them. So I certainly like all that stuff, and I would watch the film again. I'm just not necessarily as high on it as I was hoping, which I was hoping to 6 out of 5 this thing.
It's interesting. I should probably see In Bruges. That's probably his most highly respected film, and I haven't seen it. But yeah, The Banshees of Inisherin is my favorite out of what I've seen. But yeah, I definitely need to see In Bruges. That's a big one for me. The only thing I've seen the beginning of it. I don't know why I turned it off for some reason. I have no idea. This is a while ago. But all I remember is him like making fun of the fat people who are going into some sort of tower. But,
it's very good. Yeah, that movie is. If you haven't watched it recently, it's worth a rewatch, and if you haven't watched it, it's worth a watch.
I think that brings us to our second to last topic, and that's the Phantom Menace repri.
We have a clip. Like we do. Let's listen to it.
Yeah.
Did anyone watch this with subtitles on?
I did.
Some of the Jar Jar stuff, like there's I wish I should have said this at the beginning of the show if Sean had asked how I was doing, because I was eating pizza, but he says, Misa Day startin' pity okie day with the brisky morning munchin'.
I say brisky morning munchies to my daughter. I go, it's time for some brisky morning munchies. Yeah,
I say that smells stinkawith all the time.
See, I should watch it with the subtitles because I thought it was Stinkowitz, like Polish last name.
Well, yeah, I say whiff because I thought it was relating to smells, like whiff. So I don't even know if that's right.
Well, I don't even know if the subtitles are right. Like, I feel like the subtitles seem spelled wrong half the time.
I agree.
So.
Yeah, I know. Imagine some stenographer who's never seen these movies going, "Oh, Piusa, Yusa guy's bomb bad. Oh, Misa liking that."
So the very first Film Junk repri. What were your initial thoughts? It was like an hour and a half. Is that what it was?
Like an hour and 28 or something like that. That was one thing I wish it was a little bit longer, but there was a lot of content this week, so I get it. But to be right off the bat, I wasn't super jazzed about the idea of reprise, and I was even less jazzed about talking about the Phantom Menace. And I was talking to you about this before. I'm not that big of a Star Wars fan in general. I'm not saying I hate Star Wars. I certainly like certain films in the series, but I'm just not like, a diehard fan or anything. But the key thing here, though, that really brought it up was the return of Matt Gorley. So that was great to see, and he was great on the episode. And it's been a while. I don't think he's been on. They were trying to figure out when the last time he was on was. And I believe I'm pretty sure, I don't know the exact episode number, but it was like in 2018, towards the end of 2018, when they visited the locations, like the running tunnel and all that stuff.
Yeah, Niagara movie tour.
Yeah, so it's been about 4 years, and he was on that episode in full, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it was great to see him again. Now he's on the Conan O'Brien podcast, and is an integral part of Team Coco. So it's cool to see him on this show again. But I enjoyed the episode. Yeah.
That was episode 683, Niagara movie tour plus junk mail with Matt Gorley, and that was Tuesday, November 6th, 2018. So it has been a while since he was on the show.
I don't know if it'll be a long time before he's back, but yeah, I love hearing him on the show. How do you feel about Matt as a guest, like in general?
Yeah, I mean, he's like somebody that, even though I am not a fan of like Super Ego or any of the stuff that I think I listened most to. I Was There Too. I enjoyed that, but I'm certainly not a diehard fan of that. But he was somebody that, even when I was like, so I'd be listening to Film Junk, and if I was talking podcasts with somebody, they'd almost always bring up like Super Ego. So that is how I like kind of first, like when they was brought up on Film Junk, I was like, oh yeah, somebody so and so was telling me and mentioned Matt Gorley, so it was like a big deal always that Matt Gorley like showed love for the show, and not just like showed love, like he was like he was like us, he was like a genuine fan of the show, and then so that gave some credence to what the Film Junk crew was doing. So Matt's always been a great guest, great friend of the show.
Yeah, and he's led to some pretty cool moments. One that was great was when they had Paul F. Tompkins call in and do a Werner Herzog impression. That was a pretty amazing Film Junk moment. Yeah, so I think he's great as a guest. I find it impressive that you knew somebody that listened to Super Ego. I know he's kind of big in the podcast world, but in terms of people I know, if I asked anybody about like name a podcast, I would think that the only person they could think of was like Joe Rogan, and that's about it. But
yeah,
yeah.
Joe. I don't know. There was a time where, because I was living in Vancouver, and it seemed like because I saw Paul F. Tompkins there twice. I saw Doug Benson there, and it was like really like a time where there was like the early podcast rise, like all the Comedy Bang Bang stuff. And so I think Super Ego actually came to Vancouver or something. And so that was one of the reasons that it just seemed like people that I knew then were aware of Super Ego and who Matt Gorley was.
Yeah, that's cool. I enjoyed the James Bonding podcast that he did. There's some, I mean, I do tend to sort of focus or have more interest in the movie related ones because I'm a movie fan. I do enjoy him. I think he's a funny guy. I used to be a really big fan of Paul F. Tompkins and his comedy. I've sort of become less of a fan, but I'm not like, I don't dislike him or anything, but yeah, I really enjoyed James Bonding. I Was There Too, like you mentioned, and they sort of touched on the fact that Matt is re-releasing his I Was There Too episodes. And I went back and listened to the old There Will Be Blood episode with Paul F. Tompkins. Paul F. Tompkins has a pretty awesome cameo in that. And then there was also, he actually had a Phantom Menace episode with Greg Proops that was just released. And they also talked about, he has one with the guy who plays Jar Jar, which isn't released yet, but I'm hoping that will come out because that sounds like a pretty interesting one. But yeah, I really enjoy I Was There Too for sure.
Yeah, I remember listening to the Jar Jar one when it originally played, and that is a good conversation. So that will be it's crazy that we're at a period of time where it's like unleashing the vault of podcasts. You know what I mean? And you can like do a re-release of a podcast that is now defunct. But so were you happy with the conversation here? Like, we've heard them talk about episode 1 in great detail in the original premium podcast, and I'm sure we've heard them talk about it on the show. So do you think that they successfully were able to bring a new perspective to things, and was it worth our Patreon subscription for this repre?
Well, I think in terms of a new angle, Jay was really pushing his supposed love for the film. I don't really know whether I buy it, but I think if it is true, it's more of a nostalgia, and like a nostalgia for the time that it came out, and an enjoyment of more of the practical end of things, and the fact that it feels different from the other two in terms of the technical side. But yeah, I didn't rewatch it myself. Listening to the review, or not re-listening, listening to the review, I was interested to kind of go back and watch it. I would be interested to do that. It does have more of a cinematic feeling, but yeah, the last time I watched it, I don't remember being a big fan at all. How do you feel about episode 1?
Yeah, I'm just looking up everyone's reviews for it right now. Interesting that the Phantom Menace is not the first thing on Letterboxd. I think it's okay. I guess I gave it a 3.5, and I rewatched it a few months ago. I think we're probably in like the same boat. It's certainly, I mean, I guess I had kind of like a J bump. So they released the prequels premium on October 15th, 2011. So it's been 11 years since they did a deep dive on it. And then for myself, the last time I had watched it on May 19th, 2012, on the 13th anniversary of the film. And then I hadn't watched it until June of this year, so 10 years. And when I watched it in 2012, I gave it a 2. And then when I watched it in 2022, I gave it a 3.5. So there's a bump there. Do you know what your star rating is for the film?
Well, I have to go back and look. I know for sure the last time I watched it was like 2015, because I know I was watching it leading up to the release of Force Awakens. But
yeah, you gave it a 2.5.
I'm
I'm looking at your review right now. You gave it a 2.5.
But I remember it being my least favorite out of the prequels, and I can definitely understand that it's better technically. It more sticks to what a traditional movie is, although it still has, tons of CGI effects. But I understand how it's better in a technical sense, and it's nice having Liam Neeson there. And the score is amazing, and the Duel of the Fates is the best, and the lightsaber battle between Darth Maul, that's an amazing scene. But in terms of the story that's there, I was the most bored by that story out of any of the prequels. So that was my main thing. And there's a lot of, and this has been, driven into the ground, but there's a lot of annoying cutesy characters. I can't get into that. But really, essentially, I just wasn't into the story, and I was more into the story in the other two.
So then when you're listening to this repre, is it hard to want to pay attention? And is it hard to care at all about what's being said? Particularly because, while I think for the most part they avoided repeating too much, but I don't necessarily know if they brought like a big new defense forward. I think the thing that has already been mentioned on the show, the reevaluation of, and Matt Gorley said it very well in regards to reevaluating what Red Letter Media did with their takedown on the film versus the film itself, and how the takedown has not aged well and how the film has. I think that's a really good point. And I think everything that I think fondly of about the prequels comes from episode 1 for me, because that's a period in time, 10 years old. It could have been anything, and I would have loved it. Loved Jar Jar at the time, loved everything, you know what I mean? And so there's a nostalgia there. Similar to you, I don't think I'm that huge of a Star Wars fan, at least anymore. And so I don't really care that much either way. I just think listening to it, the value for me is they were clearly psyched about talking about it together, and I enjoy just listening to them talk about anything. Do I think that I don't even think the repre needs to be a thing, personally. We can maybe get into that a little bit more. But I don't think I would have been like, I am aching for the Film Junk guys to revisit episode 1. I'm aching always for content where the Film Junk guys are all engaged and having a good time. So that's what this was. So I think it delivered in the end.
Yeah, I agree, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I mean, like I said, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but I still do enjoy them in a certain sense, and I enjoy hearing about their nostalgia for it. And also, I think they just know how to bring in the right elements to make the episodes interesting. I think that's why they brought in Matt. We get to hear about his take on it, which we haven't heard before, or at least not like in the Film Junk world. So I thought that was good. And while I don't think the reprise necessarily need to be a thing, I kind of agree, but like at the same time, I think they'll always find an interesting way to spin things, and so I'm always excited for new Film Junk content, whatever it is.
So I brought this up when we talked about the premium one shots, and I feel the exact same way about the reprise. Unless they do something like a top 5 or something to differentiate themselves from the retro reviews, all these are just renamed retro reviews, and there's no difference at all between talking about episode 1 and talking about One Magic Christmas. To me, they could all fall under the retro review banner, and that would just be neater. For whatever reason, they're branding this stuff. Like, do you think we are even going to hear another reprieve? Like, what would they even do?
Well, I was actually just thinking about that. I think we will get at least another one. I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm trying to think of what they would cover. There has to be some key ones. I could see them just going and talking about Prometheus again, even though they've talked about that a ton. I'm trying to just think of things that are iconic, like kind of film junk conversations. Definitely stuff in the Alien series could be covered again. Or I'm not saying should be covered again, but I could just see it happening. What else? Maybe like Back to the Future. I'm just thinking about like, it seems like this stuff is like covering classic movies that they just love talking about. Or not classic, but I just mean in terms of culturally, like very popular films. Yeah, so that's kind of the angle I think they're going to go with it.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Jay has been building up to a revisit of episode 1 for a while. Like, I think at least a year, if not longer than that, talking about how they want to revisit it and have another conversation about episode 1. Something like Flight, they already revisited it once, right, after the original review. So again, I am all for all this content. I just think if we're going to brand it something different, like again, like the Criterion-itis, so that's fine if, say, they're delving into like maybe the extras on a Criterion disc as well. But if they're just watching it and it's available outside of Criterion, it could just be a retro review. And I think it would be simpler and neater for all this stuff, because I think you said before the show, well, why wasn't One Magic Christmas a premium one shot rather than just a retro review, you know what I mean? And so there's like, there's no differentiating a lot of this stuff. So I think they either need to boil it down to what works, or I would rather just see it all go under a neat banner of retro review.
Right. Yeah, I can mostly agree with that. But yeah, at the same time, I don't worry too much about it. It's weird because like there's no like clean, because I feel like the thing that makes all this stuff uniform is if it has like a nice feed and if it's numbered. But like none of this stuff is. It's really just Patreon content. The premiums felt like their own thing because they were all on Bandcamp, and they had their own little pictures and they were numbered, and so that felt like its own distinct sort of piece of work. But and that's another thing with like the premiums being released on Patreon now. If you're a hero or a premium member or something like that, you get those premium episodes, and I've been getting them, and they feel less like premiums now. They just feel like another piece of content. But yeah, so it was nice to have, the Bandcamp and like have the Film Junk feed on iTunes or whatever it may be to keep these things like sort of separate and uniform. But now it's sort of all just Patreon stuff. But I'm not totally against that, but I know what you mean. Like it's sort of shifting away from like a uniformity, I guess.
And as someone who I save the episodes and I divide them up into what it is, it's just weird to be like, oh, I have one premium one shot here, I have a repre, you know what I mean? It's saved in different files. And I mean, it'd be awesome if next year we have a ton and they're psyched about doing these different categories. But I think what is going to happen is everything's just going to kind of shake out in the wash, and it's going to all just be retro reviews in the end.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. But I think that brings us to our final topic, which is Avatar 2. There was a pretty massive discussion of that. It was the main review of the week. And do we have a clip?
Anyone else get major Cobra Kai vibes from this?
A little bit, yeah.
I was definitely thinking that, yeah.
I didn't, but I mean, the dialogue is really weird. Like calling people buttholes and...
Yeah.
Well, he's trying to write it. It reads or sounds like a 68-year-old man trying to write how his kids talk for his film. And I guess the reason, the explanation for that is what we're hearing is, that sort of classic movie style of, okay, we're hearing them talking in English, but they're actually talking in Navi
language. Yeah.
their language. But yeah, it's really attempts to, as it like he basically does for tween and teen lingo talk. He treats it the same way he treats military talk. Like you're going to get a bunch of was in there and a bunch of we're not in Kansas anymore, and like that first scene when they're all together, like there are elements of James Cameron's representation of the military that I think has its charms, especially in the older films, because they're a little dated in that way. But that one, the first scene where someone is popping bubble gum, like blowing bubbles, the other person is in the foreground just like lifting weights.
It's out of Aliens. It's straight Aliens for sure.
It's just,
it feels like when they're all working out, right? They're all being cool together.
Yeah, it's so caricature and cliched, and I don't have a problem with that, but generally, this is a over 3 hour epic that, you know, sometimes I think feels like it's you know, the weight on its shoulders, and it's kind of like a self-imposed weight on its own shoulders for how important this film is in terms of the modern blockbuster, filmmaking technology, and storytelling in general. I feel like it struggles sometimes to carry that weight.
So I'm looking at box office numbers, current box office numbers. So this was for the, I guess, 2 weeks. So ending on yesterday, the 25th, we got a total gross of $261,681,686. There was a 52.3% drop, which I think is probably pretty high for the type of film and for it being the holidays. So, Drew, are you happy with what the Film Junk review of Avatar: The Way of Water was? Were you surprised by anything? And do you think The Way of Water has the legs, or rather the fins, to get to where it needs to go in regards to making that money?
Well, in terms of being happy with the review or not, I was surprised that Jay was sort of into it as much as he was. Not to say he was super into it, but he seemed pretty into it. Because, like, you know, when they reviewed Avatar on the James Cameron Premium, he was pretty much blasting it and just talking about how boring he thought it was. But he seemed to be ready to return to Pandora, though. And so I thought that was interesting. And, yeah, but then Frank was kind of, like, you know, not as into it as I expected him to be. He still liked it, but he was sort of on the lower end, just in terms of where my expectations were. So I thought that was interesting. But then to cover the box office stuff, I did want to mention, I think you asked me a few weeks ago what I thought the Avatar opening weekend would be. I think I predicted 135 million. I just want to say, I'm pretty sure that was dead on. That's exactly what it made on the opening weekend. So I just wanted to say that there, that I did get that exactly right. But, yeah, I actually think it's doing decently. People are talking about it dropping off. People are talking about, like, the opening weekend not being up to expectations, but it's still almost doubled the original. And it's still, I think it does have legs, even though, like, it did have a little bit of a drop off. There was, like, freezes all over the country. People were blaming the weather for, like, other movies bombing. Like Babylon had a massive bomb that only made like 5 million, which is horrible. So it still did pretty well in terms of, like, all these other movies that are failing. Avatar made a decent amount of money. And I'm looking at, like you said, it's 889 million right now worldwide. It's already approaching $1 billion. He says it needs to get to 2 billion to break even or make profit, rather. And Frank was saying he doesn't see that happening. It's not going to make 2 billion. But honestly, we're already close to $1 billion. I can see it making 2 billion, which is crazy. But I think a lot of that is that Avatar is very popular internationally. It's already made 600 million internationally. That's pretty impressive.
So were you surprised that Sean came in on the low end of everybody? Because he certainly seemed surprised at the end, because he gave it a 3. Jay and Frank were 4, and then Dax gave it a heavy 4.5, and it seemed like they kind of trashed the film, like the claws were out and they were going to go bonanza on it, but at the end the star ratings were pretty decent for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Sean, I think, came in like where I'm at, and I wasn't really surprised because I never really know where to pin him. He can kind of go either way. But yeah, he was a lot more like how I felt about it. I mean, he seemed to be more negative than I was, but I still agreed with a lot of his points more than I agreed with Jay's points or Dax's points or Frank's points. But even though Frank gave it a fairly high rating, I guess I was expecting him because, he was out in his Na'vi hoodie. I was expecting a 5 or a 6, but, he was just sort of even keel on it.
What were your thoughts?
Did you listen to the review?
Yeah, I listened. I didn't listen to the spoiler discussion. More just because I hadn't got around to it, but I probably will because I don't really care that much. I mean, again, it's like anytime they're engaged, these big movies, they're all into the populist auteur, whether or not they will all admit it. They get most excited for films like this, so as a fun discussion from them. Again, like without seeing a film, there's like a ceiling for how much I can appreciate a review. It's nice to know exactly what's being referred to. But yeah, I did listen. It's fun enough conversation. I'm wondering if you see the value in such a long review as it was, because I think before spoilers we were in the hour 30 mark for it, and then so I think, like you said, 2 hours probably total with spoilers was Avatar discussion. Was there fatigue? Because I know you were coming out not being that jazzed on the film, so did you reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm done, or were you engaged the whole time?
There was sort of fatigue. I was honestly, to be perfectly honest, sort of forcing myself through all of it because I wanted to make sure I was listening to it for the show. But yeah, I don't know. I probably, if we weren't doing this show, I still would have listened to it, but I might not have listened to the spoiler discussion. I might not have finished all of it. I might have skipped to a different section. I'm not totally sure, but I was surprised at how long the discussion was. And a lot of it was Jay, like, waxing poetic on this film, which I just thought was interesting because he was so against the original in this latest James Cameron premium.
So now that the Way of Water review is out of the way, and I'm thinking of this both for the longevity of The Way of Water and then also for what we're interested in, are there any upcoming movies where you're jazzed about the review on Film Junk, potential review, and then do you think there's anything that's going to stand in the way for The Way of Water for the next couple months?
No, I think the only month that needs to make its goals is January, and January's dead. It's going to be the only thing to see, for the next little while. The next thing that probably gives it any competition is Ant-Man, which is in early February. But, yeah, in terms of reviews that I'm looking forward to, we're at the end of the year, and pretty much this year is done in terms of movies, and we're moving on to the next year. And, yeah, I'm just trying to think of what's coming out.
Off the top of my head, Noah Baumbach's White Noise is next week, right? Or this week. It's on the Friday. So that I would be interested in.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that. That's one. I didn't think about that, but one, because I've seen it. I saw it in the theater, and I enjoyed it to a degree. But that's one because of Netflix and because of the fact that there's other things that they're trying to get to. I could see it slipping through the cracks, so I'm not totally sure if they'll review it, but I would definitely love to hear it. I mean, that'd be a very interesting discussion for sure.
Sorry, I didn't know you'd seen it, so I'm just looking up your star rating. Looks like you never gave a star rating for it.
I did, unless I improperly
okay, now I found
something.
It. Okay, no review for it. 3.5. Okay, that was back on the 11th of December. Do you think the FJ guys will be into that?
It sort of goes off the rails. It's based on a book that's been widely talked about as unfilmable. And I haven't read the book, but watching the movie, you can definitely get that sense at a certain point about why people say that. And going after the movie, I read the plot synopsis of the book, and it seems like it's pretty faithful. So I don't like. It's very literary, and I know they weren't big fans. Or at least Jay wasn't a big fan of Inherent Vice, like just off first viewing. Not to say he wasn't a fan, but he was just sort of unsure of how to feel about it. I could see them sort of having a similar response and just being sort of unsure. But yeah, I was hoping to love it. I didn't love it, but there were some elements that I thought were really good.
So looking at what's coming up, you think they're going to be doing a feature review for Megan on to be released on January 6th?
Maybe if they're desperate. I mean, I honestly doubt it. They'll probably just find something else that they haven't covered yet. But
yeah, I think they'll end up doing they'll do the new Scott Cooper Pale Blue Eye because that's on Netflix that day.
Oh yeah, that's one I forgot was coming out. Yeah, I want to see that. There's a couple of little outliers. Like there's that. Empire of the Light has been getting bad reviews, but I still kind of want to see it. The new Sam Mendes movie.
Do you think they'll be psyched to be expanding on Friday the 13th in January? What appears to be a brand new Tom Hanks classic, A Man Called Otto.
Yeah, I've seen the trailers for that. It looks pretty not great, but that would be an interesting discussion.
He's just telling his agent, "I'm only working if I get to do a voice," because that seems to be his thing now.
He has these weird little projects. This reminds me of when he did that movie The Hologram for the King. Like, you remember that? These weird little small movies that I'm like, why is he making this? But yeah, I don't really know what his decision making process is like. But yeah, he's an interesting actor because I respect him in a sense. But there's a lot of movies he makes that are just junk, and yeah, it's interesting.
So from looking ahead, really, I don't think they're going to be that jazzed about anything until the new Shyamalan on the 3rd. And I'm not saying that they're going to be necessarily loving the film, but I think they'll be anticipating it a little bit. Either that, or they'll be. I hope that they review this on Ball Junk, 80 for Brady. I think that's got to be reviewed on Ball Junk, but. This is weird. I don't know what this means and if this is going wide, but so I'm on firstshowing.net and it's saying that a remaster of Titanic is releasing on the 10th of February.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I think this year is its 25th anniversary, but I guess maybe it's overshadowed by the new Avatar coming out, so they've pushed it to February for the re-release, but I wouldn't mind seeing that in the theater again, to be honest.
It just seems weird that they would
pop on it.
that the Cameron stooges would have two things to pick from. Like they should be rewatching Avatar: The Way of Water for the 6th or 7th time by February 10th, not seeing Titanic again in the theaters.
I actually not curate, but in my private lists, I put together a blueprint of every year, so that I can see exactly what's coming out in sequential order. But one thing that's interesting, Infinity Pool, which is the new Brandon Cronenberg movie, that's supposed to come out January 27th. I don't know if it's going to be limited. It probably will be. But that'll be an interesting one to see early in the year. And then, like you said, Knock at the Cabin, February 3rd or something like that. And then Magic Mike's Last Dance also in February. So I could see them reviewing that.
I also could see them doing... Kids vs. Aliens, which is the new Jason Eisner film, because that just has Canadian.
I haven't heard of that.
That just has Canadian, it's a Canadian film, and Jason Eisner was directed Hobo with a Shotgun, so it's his first feature film since Hobo with a Shotgun. So I think it might be just based on their support of Psycho Goreman. I can see them watching that.
Yeah, for sure. And a key movie of next year that'll be great to hear about is Oppenheimer. That's going to be huge, but that's not until July.
Yeah, hopefully there's like
And Barbie.
hopefully there's hopefully there's like a nuclear bomb premium podcast where any film where a nuclear bomb has been detonated is covered in tribute to Oppenheimer.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when Jay wanted to do a UFO premium, and there was pushback against that. But yeah, they should definitely try to do a nuke premium. Did you see those news stories where Nolan was saying like that he didn't use any CG in the bomb sequences?
Yeah,
That
people
was
were
weird.
telling me about that. It'll be very curious to see that film. I hope it's good. I think Nolan is down a peg after Tenet, so I think he needs to do something to win me back.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind Tenet. It sort of grew on me, but yeah, I think this is interesting because it's not. He still is sort of giving it a blockbuster grandeur that he can't help at this point, but it's still more down to earth than a lot of his other movies have been for the last like 10 years or so. But it'll be interesting to see him like do some more character centered stuff. But obviously he's not gonna be able to help but like explore time dilation and just go deep into these bomb sequences and just wank off through visual effects. But that's Nolan for you.
So we've been talking about what Film Junk might potentially be doing, but have we decided what we're doing next week if there's not a new episode?
Well, I have some ideas I could run by you, but yeah, I'm not totally sure. I forget if they said that there was going to be... Oh, they're doing that Junk Mail episode coming up. So that's one thing we could discuss. But I think there is on Thursday. There's like a live stream happening.
Well, I guess one of us will hopefully be a part of that. And you can trust here at Mouth Breathers Radio that we're always on the Film Junk beat, looking for the hottest Film Junk stories to bring to you every week. So do not touch that dial. It's a great episode, Drew. Enjoyed talking with you. And I think we'll see everybody next week. So I'm FilmApe.
And I'm Drew. See ya.
Bye.